Here's what RFK Jr. means when he says there have been no actual double-blind long-term safety studies done with an actual placebo on those injections that children receive. What he means is that the way they do it on just about every study except one small arm of the HPV Gardasil trial, what they do is they actually compare the ingredients, which include the antigen, which is the virus or the bacteria, plus the adjuvant, which can be preservatives, things like polysorbate 80, things like in a small amount, there's mercury in some of them, like the flu shot, and then a lot of them have aluminum. And there's other things like sometimes chicken egg to culture the thing in. So what they do oftentimes is they actually compare what they're doing the trial on, this new drug, compared to a different one, but it still has another antigen and all the adjuvant stuffs like the heavy metals. Or it'll just compare it to only the adjuvant but not the antigen. So what happens is they're just comparing outcomes. They're not actually saying, well, did anybody get hurt? They're just wanting to make sure that there weren't a whole lot more people getting hurt from the new drug and compared to the old one or the adjuvant only version. So if what's showing up, like Christopher Huxley and all these other scientists that are studying things like the aluminum, there's some really crazy types of aluminum, even especially in Gardasil, like these weird combinations of enmeshed aluminums, and those are extremely toxic. And if you're comparing a new drug to one that's like just the aluminum part, just the adjuvant, or a different one, and they both are toxic because the adjuvants are the most toxic parts oftentimes, except for the live virus ones, which the live viruses can be pretty toxic, and the MMR has live virus in it, and chickenpox has live virus in it. But so they're comparing two very similar things, just with either a different antigen or slightly different formulation. So if there's, let's say, 5 people get injured in the adjuvant only arm of the trial, and 5 or 4 people get injured in the new drug, then they consider it wildly successful because the same exact amount of people got injured, or maybe even one less, but still there's a lot of injury. And so what they're not doing is they're not comparing the new drug to just a simple saline water injection, which is actually inert. So if they were to do that, or if they were to look at the what is it called, vaccine safety data link information, then they would see, looking back in time at all the people who were, they would see the difference in what happens when you actually give it to a lot of people and not give it to another cohort. And you can look at the Amish, and they don't have these same autoimmune diseases and reactions and stuff, allergies, asthma, all these things as much as our current population does. Also, there's a doctor in Portland, let me see if I can remember his name. I'm spacing on his name. Someone in the comments can help me out. Paul, I can't think of his last name. I remembered his name. It's Paul Thomas. He's amazing. He did a study of, in his practice, he has like thousands of patients, and he's some and not some. He gives them true informed consent. And the were way healthier, way less incidence of, or way healthier, less incidence of all these issues. So if we had real safety science, they do decent efficacy science, like, they say safe and effective. And sometimes they can be relatively effective to reduce the risk of these diseases, not as effective as things like sanitation and nutrition have been in the history of all of this. That's what really brought those diseases down, the childhood diseases. And then vaccines came in and helped somewhat also. But if you look at a risk versus reward perspective, and, with VAERS being highly, highly underreported, lots of doctors don't even report, and most people don't even know it exists. That's vaccine adverse events reaction, or I forget what it stands for, but it's where you report vaccine injuries. That's super underreported. They've done studies, and they assume it's around 1% or something reported. So yeah, it's not a real true look at how many people are having adverse reactions, and they're not studying them long enough. Sometimes it's only 4 days or a couple of months. So really, RFK Jr. is talking about the need to do better safety testing and to bring back liability to the pharmaceutical companies, because they don't have any liability anymore. So they're not really being pushed in an economic way to make them safer because of the Childhood Vaccine Act in 1986 that was passed. So that's a lot of information. I'm just trying to clear the air, because people seem to be like, what? He's saying there aren't, placebo studies? But that's what they consider a placebo. They consider putting a bunch of metal in the person, like a bunch of aluminum in one arm and a bunch of aluminum plus the adjuvant in the other arm, and calling that a real safety study. Yeah, it's not. So there you go. That's what he means. Hope that's helpful.